Starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Allison, and I'm the community manager at Ning. I'm here with Juana from the Ning advocacy team and Richard Millington, the man of the hour. This is our fourth in a series of Ning talks with Richard. In his first, Richard shared strategies for generating activity. The second covered growth, how to manage it, how much is too much, etc. For his third webinar, Richard tackled some of the most asked questions about moderating and facilitating member engagement in an online community. And today, Richard will be discussing the science behind it all. Richard Millington is the founder of FeverBee, an online community consultancy. He's spent the last 10 years mastering a range of social sciences, refining key community management skills, learning how to use and apply data, collaborating with over 100 different organizations, and amassing a collection of case studies for almost every situation I can imagine he's encountered by this point. So he's a wealth of knowledge, and his focus over the years has been the science, the data, the hard facts behind what motivates members to participate, become active, and of course, how to use that information to build bigger, better, and more active online communities, which is in fact the subheading of his new book, Buzzing Communities. If you haven't checked it out, definitely encourage you to give that a read. Really enjoyable and packed full of information as well. So whether you're a brand new Ning customer or an old hand who's looking for some fresh tips, this webinar should give you a better understanding of what your community members really want, and it might even help you avoid some of the mistakes many organizations make when building online communities. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, and you might have a lot, you can submit as many as you like. Just please submit them using the questions feature. And Richard will take some time at the end to respond to as many of those as he can. I also invite you all to contribute to the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag NingTalk, N-I-N-G-T-A-L-K. And no worries if you have to leave a little early today. The recording will be available on our Vimeo page, and we'll send out the link in a follow-up email. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to any Ning customers in the audience, and a hearty hello to all the community-loving folks out there. Thank you so much for carving a little time out of your day to be with us. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Richard.
Thanks for that. That is actually the longest introduction you've given for me yet. And did you call me the man of the hour? I'm not entirely sure how I'm supposed to live up to that.
The man of the hour.
The man of the hour. Okay, so let me share my screen and we'll get going. So today we're going to be talking about how you can use social sciences to increase activity in your online communities. We're going to touch upon a couple of things that we talked about in the very first webinars, the sense of community and stuff like that, and then also talk about a variety of different things as well. But before I do that, I want to begin by telling you a story that I'm going to call the Great Migration. So about 6 months ago, I heard from a data security company, a very well-known company that over the last 10 years had developed a number of extremely successful online communities. So they had communities around a variety of different products and services that they sold. And that's been going fine for the best part of 10 years. All of these communities have been growing and the level of activity had been increasing. But what they found from the beginning of 2012 was that the level of growth and activity in that community was beginning to decline. In fact, across all of the online communities they had, every single community they had was suddenly now in decline. Less members were participating less frequently. So they got all the smartest minds in the organization together. Well, smartest minds relating to digital communications. And they decided that the issue was the platform. The platform that they were using wasn't good enough. So they decided to move from one platform to another. They decided to move from Lithium to Jive. Now, I don't know if you know much about enterprise platforms, but you pay an insane amount of money, and it's a really expensive thing to move from one platform to another. And if you've done this, you also know that doing this is absolute hell to do. They spent 4 months and 500,000 US moving from one platform to another, migrating all the membership information across, all the posts across, everything across. And when they had done that, they got to a point where they were finally ready to flick the switch, or whatever it is you flick, and make the community live. And that's what they did. And can you guess what happened when they did? Nothing. There was no immediate uptick in the level of growth and activity in that community. In fact, after 1 month, the level of activity and the level of growth in the community had continued to decline. There were still less members participating less frequently. This company had wasted so much time and so much money trying to solve this problem by changing the platform. And the reason why I tell you this story is because the way this organization tried to fix the issues in their community is the way most organizations try to fix the issues in their online community. Too often we look for a solution to do with the platform. We try to change the platform instead of trying to change what's really wrong. And what I want to do in this talk is try and change that. I want to get us focusing on social sciences. If you look at any types of online community platforms that are out there, you find that what's generally happened is that now it's much easier to build online communities. We have democratized the tools, but we have become obsessed with the tools themselves instead of really understanding the social sciences behind what actually increases growth and activity in an online community. And we need to go past that platform thinking now. We need to start thinking about what really works. How can you really change the level of growth and activity in most online communities? Instead of when there's a problem in our community, looking to change the platform, we should be looking to change the social sciences. We should be looking to use the social sciences we have to build better and more active communities. Because most of the answers that we want are hidden in social sciences. Wouldn't it be amazing if right now we had a blueprint that we could take and develop any number of successful online communities? And the more amazing thing about this is that we have this blueprint. It's being locked up in the academic world for a long time, but it's been there. Community organizers have been using this blueprint for a long time to develop successful online communities. When I was 15 years old and I was first getting into, when I was 15 years old, I got the internet at a really young age. And that's a dangerous thing to do because I quickly found out you could play games online. But one of the things I discovered was that I wasn't that good at playing games online, but I was very interested in the communities that were growing up around these games. Every online community every game had its own online community. And one of the things I was lucky enough to notice was that if you can identify and isolate these elements that are present in every online community, you can use this as a blueprint to build any number of successful online communities. So this is what I began doing, and this is what we've built the company on. And that blueprint is not based on technology. It's built just upon those social sciences, just upon understanding what really works. The social sciences have remained constant for decades now. It's only the technology that's changed, and we need to get back to the social sciences. So what I want to cover in this talk today are 3 different things. First, I want to go back into the sense of community, specifically how you can use a sense of community to build better online communities. Second, I want to talk about motivation. I want to talk about the different types of motivation and why we misunderstand motivation, and how you can use motivation to get more people actively participating in your communities. And third, I want to talk about social identity theory, because there's nowhere near enough attention on this as there needs to be. So let's begin with the sense of community. The sense of community is important because this defines who actually feels on a psychological level that they're a part of your community. The communities with the highest level of growth, the highest levels of activity, the strongest return on investment are those with this very strong sense of community. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a conference and I was listening to a man named John Coates. John Coates was the world's first online community manager. He was the community manager of The Well, a community which is nearly 3 decades old. And when he spoke about the history of The Well and how the community came about, how it developed, the thing that was clear in all this time was that The Well always had an incredibly strong sense of community. It's the communities that have a very strong sense of community that lasts for years instead of months. And if you want to build better online communities, it's really important to understand what the different elements are and how you can influence and shape these different elements. And the great thing about this is that it's been broken down. It's been broken down into 4 distinct things that you can implement and things you can use and things that you can adjust in your online communities. These things are: first, membership; second, influence; third, fulfillment of needs or integration of needs; and fourth, a shared emotional connection. So let's begin with membership. Membership is the idea that people that are in a community can identify who is and isn't in that community. It's the idea that if you're in a community, you can tell by the expressions that someone uses, the stories that they share, how they look, or the things that they talk about they've done, whether they're a part of your community or not. And that means that people in a community have crossed some sort of boundary. And remember, we're talking about in a community at a psychological level here. So they crossed some sort of boundary. And that boundary will be some experience that they've gained, something that they've done in the past, an attribute that they have, resources that they've acquired, passions that they have at a very deep level. I could walk into a conference of doctors tomorrow. I could wear the white lab coat, if they're still wearing white lab coats. But they would quickly find out, within 30 seconds of speaking to me, that I'm not a part of their community. They would quickly find out by the terms I use, the lack of war stories that I have, and a variety of other things, that I'm not really a part of that community. I'm not an accepted member of the community. And this is important because if you want to build stronger online communities, one of the key things that you can do is raise the boundary to being an accepted member. So if we look at the Dr. Doc community here, so this is one of our clients from about, I think it was a year and a half ago. And we found that in September 2011, this community wasn't doing well. It was quite sick. There wasn't much activity, there wasn't much growth. And when we looked at the community, we found that this was a community for every doctor in the world ever. But what we did is that we narrowed this. Instead of targeting every doctor ever, we looked specifically at doctors in the UK that had recently graduated from medical school, because they had more in common with each other. And communities where people have more in common with each other are more active. And one of the tough decisions that we advise many of our clients to make is to raise the barrier to what it takes to be an accepted member, using the demographics, the habits, or the psychographic information. So using information about who people are, what their ages or locations are, using what their habits are, what they do, what they spend most of their time doing, or using their psychographics, what they think or what they feel. You can create a unique boundary that makes your community incredibly unique, but also makes it more difficult to be accepted as a member. But those that are accepted as a member, those that do have the experience and knowledge, the attributes, the skills, or whatever that you're looking for, participate more frequently. What we found with this community is that when we increase this boundary, the number of members participating and the amount of activity has continued to rise every month but one since September 2011. And this is true in so many types of online communities. So in CareSpace, for example, this is a successful online community, but they target just a specific group of care workers in the UK. They don't target all care workers, they target a very specific group. So one of the things we have to be thinking about is how we can use clear action points to build better online communities. So one of the things that's really important are common symbol systems. And by common symbol systems, what I mean are people that are in an online community use the same symbols as each other. They have symbols that have a unique meaning to people inside the community, but a very different meaning to people that are outside of the community. So the reason why I would be found out in the doctors community would be I wouldn't know what symbols, what terms or expressions or what anything meant. I wouldn't use any of them. And every online community is a lot like that. Every online community has ideas that are unique to them. Back in the video gaming space, we had our own language, let alone our own symbols. And it's a good idea to interview a large number of your members and do an inventory of sorts. Find out what are the terms, expressions, the symbols, the ideas that have a unique meaning to people in the community, and have a very different meaning to people outside of the community. So element 14 here, which is a great example of a successful online community, is quite literally a symbol. Element 14, when I ask this question in my talks, how many people have a unique meaning or understand something unique by the term element 14? And the answer is usually no one. But if I'm asking that to a group of design engineers, they'd be like, of course, I know this. This is an element we constantly use in our work. So element 14 is quite literally a symbol for their community. And by the way, it's always a good idea to name your community after a symbol for that community. So we want to be understanding what are the symbols in our communities and name areas of the community after that, use it in the newsletters, use it in expressions, because this shows to us that this is the type of community for us. This is a type of community for the people that you're trying to reach. So it's important to know what these symbols are and use them frequently in your community material. Another thing that's really important is in successful online communities, members know who each other are because they've made a certain number of investments into that community. So if you think about local communities, traditional local communities, the people there that were accepted as members of that community were those that participated in community activities. They went to events, they went to meetings, they raised their hands, they helped out from time to time. And the same is true of online communities as well. The people that are generally accepted as true members of the community are those that have also participated in the community for a long time. And one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of organizations make is they ask people to make too big of an investment too soon. And the reason why that's a bad idea is because people generally don't do that. Huge investments in an online community are rare. But what's more important is a steady stream of tiny investments where people can be involved and give their opinion in discussions and other ideas that are taking place. These are the types of investments that build up. When someone doesn't match or doesn't do a really big investment, a really big ask, so take a picture of our brand outside the Eiffel Tower, blah, blah, blah. That's a terrible idea. And the people that don't do it won't tell themselves they didn't do it because they're lazy. They will tell themselves they didn't do it because they don't really feel a part of this community. And their level of activity will decline as a result. So we need to have a steady stream of tiny personal investments, very small things that you can ask members in your online community to do. The second part of this is influence. So by influence, we mean everyone in an online community has to be able to feel that they can influence the community. So I took this picture before the announcement a couple of weeks ago. And this is important. If someone doesn't feel like they can influence the community, if someone doesn't feel like they can have an impact on the community, if they make a contribution that doesn't get a good response, the level of activity will plummet. In fact, if they make their first contribution and they don't get a good enough response to that, they're very unlikely to participate again. And that's why it's always important to look for members that are making their first contribution to a community and give them a special response as a result. So there are certain things you can do here to influence the level of influence that members in a community have. And one of these things is to interview people in your community. It's a good idea to create content about the members that are in your online community. You can do interviews, you can do live discussions, you can give them areas of the community that they're responsible for. You can mention them in the news posts of the community. There are so many things that you can do, but it's always a good idea to have regular content about what people in the community are doing. So you want to achieve two different things here. First, you want to give people a time and a place and a means by which they can influence the community. And then you want to amplify the level of influence that they have had. That's why it's a good idea to document when one member helps another. How can you document that? How can you share that with other people in the community? This amplifies the influence that members in the community have. So what Mixcloud do is that they interview a lot of their top community members. Mashable has the top 6 comments of the week. Now note what they're doing here. They're not looking for the people that comment the most. They're looking for people that comment the best. Because this shows every member that they didn't have to be someone that spends 10 hours a week on this community commenting so many times. They just need to have one good comment. And when you highlight the people that are making the good comments, you get more good comments. If you highlight the people that participate the most, you're going to get a lot more activity, but it's going to be a very poor quality activity. What element 414 do, and this is also really clever, is that they look for people in their community that have shown a unique level of expertise. So someone that has an expertise over a tiny small area of that group, and then they give that person their own forum category, their own group, where people that have questions about that topic can go and get help. So what they're doing is two things here. First, they're making it really easy for people in the community to find experts on specific topics. And second, they're showing people in the community that if they have a good level of influence over or good level of expertise over something in the community's subject matter, that if they contribute to, if they participate in the forums, they might also have their own area of the community as well. And this is good because it scales really, really well. You can look in your online communities right now. Look for people that have shown particular levels of expertise or particular skills or have particular experience, and give them their own place within the community. Now, perhaps this doesn't have to be a permanent place in the community. Perhaps it's just a short-term group or something that's just around for a month or so. But you can see what works out and what's most popular and then whether to continue or not. But you do need to be giving these people that had this expertise a place where they can showcase their expertise and then amplify the influence that these people have had. Autodesk takes this one step beyond this. What Autodesk do is that they find people that have the very high level of expertise, and then they give them their own regular blog or their own regular column to update. And this is a really smart tactic because, again, it shows what influence that people have. But also now they've delegated this. They can count on this one post a week from this one member. That means they can move on to other things in the community. So it's always a good idea to find the experts in your community and invite them to write a regular column or post for the community that you can then give great levels of attention to. So that covers influence. And just remember, it's not always going to be the case where every member is able to influence a community. But every member of the community has to be able to feel that they could, if they wanted to, influence the community. It's the idea, the impression that they can influence the community rather than the reality that continues getting people to participate. The next part is satisfying needs, or integration of needs, or integration and fulfillment of needs, if we're giving it its full term. So we're going to talk about motivation in just a moment, so I'm not going to spend that much time on this. But what we're basically talking about here is that the reason why people participate in a community is because they get some sort of reward from it. And that reward that they get has to align with the community's own goals. And it's very important that if you're developing a community, that these two things are aligned, that the goals of the community and the reason why people participate are very much aligned. But we'll come to motivation in just a minute. And finally, for a sense of community, shared emotional connection. Shared emotional connection is the idea that the strongest online communities share a very strong emotional connection. So they oscillate at what's called the same emotional frequency. So they're happy, sad, or angry about the same things at the same time. So this picture, for example, was taken the day after the riots in London, I think about a year and a half ago. And what was interesting about the London riots, well, there were many interesting things about the London riots, but what was interesting from a community perspective was that there were some areas of London where people came out with their brooms and they cleaned the rubbish up, they cleaned up the mess. But then there were other areas of London where that didn't happen. There were areas of London where people were much more apathetic about it, where they waited for the council to clean up. So what's the difference between these two regions of London, these two areas of London? Well, according to the Guardian newspaper at least, the difference is that the areas where people came up and they cleaned up the litter are areas where they had a very strong emotional connection, both to the community and to each other. They knew other people in the community. They weren't apathetic about it, they were angry about it. So this is important because if you're developing a community, then you need to make sure that your members can have a strong emotional connection with other members in that community. You need to make sure that they feel that they actually know the other people in the community, that they know them on a personable level, and they have an emotional feeling. They've invested their emotions into that community. So, for example, one of the things we found back with that Dr. Doc community was that the client was really keen for us to talk about, or for the people in the community to talk about, only things that would convey information. So how do you treat this issue? What do you do in this situation? But when we looked at what people in the community were doing and what they wanted to do, we found that the most popular types of discussions were types of discussions that were ethical in nature. So people discussing ethical issues. There were other off-topic discussions as well. In fact, the most popular discussion that ever took place in this community was whether it was wrong to use medical care as a reason to track down bin Laden. Now, from a perspective of conveying valuable information that you're going to use in the future, this discussion has no value whatsoever. But from the perspective of bonding a group of people together, from people disclosing information about themselves, people getting emotionally engaged in the community, this is a terrific type of discussion. One of the things we found about the Dr. Doc community is that when we allowed, highlighted, and facilitate these off-topic discussions and these ethical discussions, the level of activity instantly rose. And as a result, there were also more conveying information types of discussions, the types of discussions that our client wanted, but it was a smaller percentage of all the discussions that were taking place. Or another example. So if you look at this community here, the most popular discussion that's taken place are people that are annoyed about a government decision in Rotherham. Now, from a practical perspective, in terms of whether it helps people do social work, this type of discussion has no value whatsoever. But from the perspective of bonding a group of people together, by people expressing their emotions and becoming more engaged in the community, this discussion has a lot of value. People that share their anger in this community are bonding with other people that are also angry about that issue. These emotions, happiness, anger, sad, are all very important for an online community. So it's important to highlight these sorts of discussions, the discussions that people that are going to provoke strong emotional reactions. Happiness, anger, sadness, all these types of discussions are very good for bonding a community together. Another type of discussion, and to be honest, there are certain types of discussions that we see work across almost every type of community. One that especially works well is this one where people can show off what they've done. So in this discussion here, show off your build in the Element 14 community. I think it's in the Element 14 community. What you see here is that this is a chance where everyone can show off what they've done, where it's a status jockeying type of discussion. So I can show off what I've done, and then my ego, my pride becomes involved in that community. I want to see how I rank with the other people that are in that community. These types of discussions tend to increase activity significantly. Members can participate, they can also see what other people are doing. And the other thing that works really well about these types of discussions is that they allow members to get to know other people as well. They might identify people that they can work with. So as a result, they have a much stronger emotional connection with people in that community. Now, something else that's really important is that your community has to be the place where people can discuss the most hardcore issues related to that topic. You can always push your community towards the more hardcore types of discussions. By which I mean, in every type of community, there are discussions that you can't have anywhere else. So a friend of mine runs a cancer support community. And one of the things we found with her community was that whilst people were talking and participating, they weren't participating that much, and they weren't sharing that much information about themselves. So what we recommended that she did was push the community more towards the things that were most difficult to talk about. So to initiate discussions on the topics that were the most difficult thing to talk about, and to highlight them and to solicit contributions to them. And now, not everyone is going to participate in that, but everyone knows that when they're ready, this is a community where they can talk about that issue. And this doesn't just work for support communities, it works for a community of practice, for example. So if you look at this discussion taking place here, current detection with a Allegro ACS756 on an ATmega328. Now, no normal human being will know what this is about. No normal human being from that subject line alone will have any idea what this person is talking about. But if you're a part of this group, if you're interested in this topic, you see this and think, yes, this is the perfect discussion for me. I know what this is about. There are only so many places where you can talk about this stuff. And so it's always important to be pushing your community more towards the types of topics that they can't have in the mainstream society, that they can't have with their regular friends. And my favorite one of all time, there are only so many places in the world where you can have a 40,000 word discussion about whether to capitalize the I of the new Star Trek film, Star Trek Into Darkness. That's 40,000 words that the Wikipedia editors were debating whether to capitalize that I. This isn't the Star Trek geeks, this is the Wikipedia editors. Now, for comparison, my book was only 60,000 words. But when you think about this, to everyone else, this is madness. Why would you have a 40,000 word discussion about this? But to the Wikipedia editors, they live for this. This is amazing. They enjoy doing it. They like getting involved in it. They like arguing with each other. They like the process of how it works, of summarizing their arguments. So while the issue itself is completely irrelevant, it bonds that group together in a way that no other type of discussion can. There are only so many places in the world where you can have this type of discussion. So it's important that you are allowing members to have these off-topic discussions, that you are pushing them to talk about the more hardcore types of discussions, the types of discussions that they can't have anywhere else. And it's also important that you're allowing members to show off what they've done, to get their emotions involved in that community. So next, let's talk about motivation. I love talking about motivation because most organizations have this wrong. Most organizations have the wrong idea about what motivates people to participate in online communities. And if you go to social conferences, if you read books, when the topic of motivation comes up, it sooner or later comes back to this guy, who almost no one will recognize, but will recognize his best work. The hierarchy of needs. So the tragedy of what's happening right now is that this is being applied to online communities. This theory, which is now 70 years old, is now being applied to why people participate in online communities. And it's wrong. It was never meant to be applied to online communities. And also there's lots of data now that don't support that Maslow was correct. What you do need to know is something different. What you need to know is that people join a community for one reason, but they participate for another. The reason why people join a community is different from the reasons why people continue participating in a community. And you have to understand the motivations. So people usually join a community to satisfy their information needs. So note here, we're not saying that they're satisfying their social needs. People almost never go looking for online communities, because if you're not part of an online community, you don't know what you're missing. But they do participate, or they do join communities because they want information. There's something in that community that they want. And this is why it's nearly always a bad idea to close your online community. It's almost far better to make it a public online community so more people can find that community. The issue is that most organizations or most people that build communities cater solely to people that want information. So Walmart Mums, for example, this is a community that just gives people information. It's not about socializing members with each other. It's just about giving people information. Now compare these two online communities. If you look at the HR Business Network here, and I'm going to give you a few seconds here to take a good look at this site. Now compare this online community to this one, hr.com. What do you notice about this community? What do you notice are the differences? They target the same audience. So the HR Business Network is a community designed to give people information. It's designed to cater to someone's information needs. What it does when you visit this is that it gives you information about upcoming events, other content, advice, and stuff like that. HR.com is a community site. It's designed to facilitate interactions between members. When you visit this site, you can instantly see what people in the community are doing. You can see the new members of the community. You can see who the top members of the community are. You can see the new discussions that are taking place. What too many organizations do is that they develop content sites when they should be developing community sites. Now, there's nothing wrong with content sites if that's what you want to achieve. If you just want people to go get information then leave, then that's perfectly fine. The issue is when you only cater to someone's information needs, they might only visit your site when they want information. And that means they might only visit your site when there's a problem that they have. And they might not do that often. It might be once a week, it might be once a month, once a year, or it might be never again. However, in communities that cater to someone's social needs, these are communities where people keep coming back every day to participate and learn more. Of these two online communities, HR.com is many times more popular because it caters to an individual's social needs. People come to this online community via a variety of search terms, via referrals, via a variety of other channels when they're looking for information. But once they join that community, they get socialized in that community. They can see what other people are doing. They start responding to discussions. They start sharing their advice. And as a result, they start getting socialized in that community. They start feeling that they are part of a peer group. And this peer group factor is really important. If people keep visiting your community to see what their peer group is doing, they're far more likely to visit every day as opposed to once a week, once a year, or whatever it is with the content sites. Now, some people say you can't do this with communities of practice. There are certain communities where you can't have these types of discussions. And I think they're wrong. In most types of online communities that we've seen, you can balance the topics that are about information with the topics that allow people to really get to know other people in that community. So we want to transfer people that are visiting to satisfy their information needs to getting socially engaged in that community. And that means we want their ego involved in that community. We want their pride involved in that community. We want them to share what they've done, to have a social standing in that community, to have other people talking about them in the community. We want people continuing to visit the community for self-validation. A lot of the activity that takes place in an online community is driven by someone's need for self-validation. So we mean that they continue participating because they want to hear positive opinions about themselves, or they want to hear the opinions they have of themselves from other people. So you might create a great post about HR and post it on HR.com because you want to hear people telling you that you're a terrific HR professional. Another really important one is efficacy. So we covered this in influence. You might continue participating in that community because you want to see the influence that you've had, the impact you've had. Not only do you want to see the impact, you want to see the impact amongst the people that you care about, your peer group, the people that share the same feelings or the same background or the same interests as you. Or it might be to defend your self-esteem needs. So you might continue participating to defend your own self-esteem within that community. Now, some of these might sound bad, but they actually drive so much activity that takes place in a community. So we need to be shifting this. We need to be shifting people that visit to satisfy their information needs to people that visit to satisfy their social needs. We want people that are emotionally engaged in their community. We want people making friends and connecting with each other. We want to focus on the types of activity that get people participating on a meaningful level with one another. So what we need to do is shift the balance of discussions away from those just conveying information to those that have a level of self-disclosure. We want discussions that allow people to really get to know each other, where people can reveal their previous experiences, their thoughts and feelings on different issues. We want people to really get to know each other in our online communities. But we don't have to go all the way. So Warrior Cats here is a very famous online community for a group of teenagers that pretty much talk gibberish the entire time. So we didn't need to go that far. But if you look at what, say, GIFGAF and the team there have done, they managed to balance people that want information with topics that get people engaged in that community, will get people where they get to know other people in the community. So, for example, one of the greatest things you can do is start when someone registers to join your online community, send them a confirmation message which asks them to give their opinion on the topical issue in your community right now. Change that confirmation message that is there and change it to a message that allows people or tells people to give their opinion on a topical debate that's taking place in the community. Because once people do that, they've taken their first step towards being a regular member in that community. Another thing you might want to look about what happens, say, 3 days after that or a week after that. What type of messages can you send out to these newcomers in the community? Can you automate it in some way? Can you have autoresponders that go out? So after someone has been a member for 3 days or made their fifth contribution, why not send them a message that tells them a little bit more about the community? Who are the top members of that online community? What are the topical issues taking place in the community? What does that community believe in? Get people participating in that community to satisfy their social needs, not just their need for information. So when people join your community, socialize them in that community. Make sure that they get to know other people in that community. Make sure that their emotions are invested in that community. We also need to know what people get from groups as well. So there are 4 different things, according to Forsyth at least. And these 4 things are a sense of belonging, mutual support, greater influence, or exploration. So this is important because people who continue participating in online communities need to be getting at least one of these. And it really helps as a community manager if you decide which of these you're going to pick. Is it a sense of belonging? So this might include most communities of interest, for example, where people find a group of people that are like them, a group where they finally belong in society. Is it mutual support for people that are going through the same things and need support in different ways? This is not just a community of circumstance, it can be job hunters, it can be a variety of different things. Is it greater influence? Is it a community where people working together can achieve more than people working alone? So communities of action might go under this. Or finally, is it to explore something new? So for a community of practice, it might be exploring new ideas, discussing what works and what doesn't work. But people need to get one of these out of participating in that group. And finally, and I think we're doing okay for time, social identity theory. So this is a huge topic, but what I want to focus upon this is one key thing. People participate more in groups that appear successful. A few weeks ago, someone asked me how they can get people to join and participate in their struggling online community. And my answer was you can't. People don't want to join and participate in a community that looks like it's struggling. What they do want to do is participate in groups that increase their social standing. People are only willing to give up their own identity and accept and embrace a group identity if that group identity is strong, if that group identity has momentum. So if you have a community that isn't successful right now, you have to make sure that it looks like it is successful. And that doesn't mean being as manipulative as what it sounds. What it means is closing down all the dead areas of your online community, making sure that you have very small goals that the community can achieve. So have a discussion, for example, and then summarize the results of that discussion for other members. That's a very small win. One of the most common community organizing tactics for generations has been to identify those small, really simple early victories that can lead up to more things later on. You have to build that momentum. And if you don't have any momentum, then you have to start focusing on these small goals that can give you momentum. Can you interview a VIP in your sector? Can you get your 10th discussion? Can the community agree on a topical issue? There will be these small victories that you can have in your online community. And if you do have a successful group identity, then it's important to showcase that group identity, to look at the platform and to showcase how many people are participating. Give the community information about themselves. Show the community what they've achieved and what they've done. Because if you do this right, you'll develop a sort of community that becomes far easier to attract people to, and becomes far easier to generate activity within. So that wraps up this very brief lesson on social sciences. What I would urge you to do is to spend more time looking at this topic, because all the answers that we want to increase activity in communities, to get more people to join communities, to even get a stronger return on investment from our communities, are in the world of social sciences, not so much technology. So thanks a lot for listening. One thing that you can do right now, this very second, is that you can download half of my book for free. Go to www.feedly.com/ning.html. Okay, I think we have some time for questions.
Sounds good. Got a few ready for you. Melissa Brown says, you mentioned self-disclosure. Do you believe an option to post anonymously, even if they're signed into their account, is more likely to entice members to self-disclose?
So self-disclosure is when people reveal what they think or feel, or information about themselves or experiences or things that they've done. Anonymous accounts doesn't particularly stop that. So as long as it's common, as long as it's common identity in the community. So what I remember back from the video gaming days was that no one ever used their real name at all. We all used nicknames and handles and stuff like that. But it was a common nickname and a common handle that we had. So when people can see the previous contributions that you've made, they might not know your name, but they know you because they had that familiarity with the handle. So that's what's more important to me than someone using their real name, is using a consistent name in the community.
So it builds that sense of familiarity and trust, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. One from Raphael. How would you entice VIPs or big influencers to join in and make sure there's something in it for them, so that or make sure there's something perhaps in the CMS so that they can add articles, start discussions? He mentions that sometimes it can be quite difficult to entice someone of that stature to join.
Sure. So there are a couple of things that we've seen work well in the past. The first is to talk about the VIP. Very few VIPs can resist people talking about them, or resist reading what people have said about them. And if there's anything they want to clarify, then clarifying that in the community. A second thing is to start off with some simple thing that you want them to do. So perhaps ask them if they want to do an interview in the community. Then perhaps at the end, let them promote their own book, for example. Look to see what they can do, one simple thing. And if that goes well, then tell them that went really well. Would you like doing a regular column for the community? And gradually ease them in that way. We found both of those approaches have worked well in the past.
All right. And just to remind folks who aren't aware, this presentation will be recorded, or has been recorded, and it is going to be available on our Vimeo page. I'll also follow up with you and send a link in an email. Our Vimeo page is http://vimeo.com/ning, N-I-N-G. And this question comes from Amy. She is wondering whether she should go public or stay private. Maybe just hit on a couple of the points, the benefits of each.
Sure. So most people that have a private online community don't need to have a private online community. They have a worry which is just them and doesn't really impact the community whatsoever. Most communities should be public. The exception are, so there are two that I know. The first is if the subject matter has to be a private online community. So one of the online communities I was involved with back in 2008 was a community for cops. and they would talk about very specific things in their procedure or the equipment, which they didn't want the bad guys to know. So they couldn't have those types of people in the community and had to validate every single person by their badge number. The other type of community is when it's an exclusive online community, but part of the thrill of being a member of that community is that it is an exclusive online community. So unless you fit into one of those two, it's usually better to have a public online community. I know there will be a lot of communities where people say they don't feel safe because anyone can join. But the truth is, you can't validate every person. I mean, how would you know if someone is who they say they are? So it's almost always much better to have a public online community. And the other benefit is with a public online community that more people can find you, they can see what's going on in the community. So you're likely to get more people joining and participating.
All right, thank you. And another one from Diana here. What happens when boundaries were not set or are not respected from the beginning, and there are many outsiders that dilute the sense of membership? Diana wonders if you kick them out, if so, how, if not, what other ways can you approach that situation?
So here's what I would recommend. So say you've launched a very broad online community and the boundaries weren't respected or anything like that. I don't think you need to kick them out. I just think you need to focus upon what your boundaries are. What is your community about and who it's for? So if it's for, say, HR professionals that run their own companies in London, then only post content about that topic. Only initiate discussions about that topic. Only highlight and create content and anything else you can do that's relevant to that topic. Mention that topic in the newsletters. Very quickly, people will get the idea of who that community is for and who it's not for. And the people that it's not for will probably leave. So that's usually the best way of handling this.
That's a great idea. Control those conversations. And let's see, so I'll just have a couple more for you. Raphael asks, what should be the percentage of active members, those who have posted or did something in the last month in a healthy community? If there are any stats, he suggests here 10%, 25%, what kind of engagement levels indicate a healthy community?
There aren't any stats that relate to the percentage of active members. So we consider an active member to be someone that has made a contribution within the last 30 days. Registered members is a meaningless statistic. It's only the people that are active that matter in your community. If they're not active, then they're very much irrelevant to the health of your community. And the metrics that we use are the level of growth, so the number of active members in the community within the last 30 days, the level of activity, so the total number of posts, and then the total number of posts per active member, and then the sense of community, whether these people feel like they're a part of a community. And we use that last one, we measure it by the sense of community index, which is something that you can look up online, and you'll find a survey that you can use for your members.
Very cool. And specifically for nonprofits, how do you translate someone in an online community into a donor?
Isn't that the amazing question? So here's what we know. People that participate in an online community, well, when people participate in an online community, their level of interest in that topic rises. So when you're connected to other people that are also interested in the same topic as you, and when you're participating in that topic with other people, your interest in that topic has increased. And that usually means that people buy more of what the company sells or buy the premium levels of what the company sells, or become more loyal customers as a result. Donations tend to work the same way. People that are very active in talking about that topic, and I mean genuinely talking about that topic, not just sharing links about the Coney video or anything like that. The people that are genuinely talking about that topic are far more likely to give more money. So it's always a good idea to be cultivating as strong a sense of community as possible, because these are the people most likely to give money. In terms of particular asks to use or tactics to use here. I'm going to have to admit that this isn't our field of expertise, so I'm nervous about giving anything specific here. But there are some great people around that have a lot more experience than we do. So if she contacts me after this, then I'll provide a few names for her.
Fair enough. I really like this question from Brenda, so I'll leave it as our final question for you today, Richard. Brenda has a couple communities that are life event oriented, for instance, taking an exam or pregnancy. What advice do you have to retain their membership? Is creating a new or separate community the answer?
So these online communities are really strange. So when my wife was planning our wedding, when we were planning our wedding, of course, um, my wife joined an online community for people that were planning their weddings. And I was always very curious about these types of communities, how they survive when they're so transient. And what tends to happen is one of two things. First, people will just pass through it quite quickly, and there's always fresh blood to go through it. It's just one of those industries where there's always going to be a lot of customers and a lot of people that are going through that stage in their lives. And second, there were people that would stick around, that will go through that same experience at the same time, and will become much closer as a result. And one of the things we found about that is that it is possible to build specific groups up or advice groups and stuff like that, but I don't quite know how this works. This is something that we usually advocate against. If I'm talking in very general terms, in terms of events, activities, I would get them to have some sort of shared goal and give them a group where they can participate in that goal, where they can get to know each other, share their advice or their bad times or their good times as they progress through their lives. But I can't think of that many online communities that are doing this yet. But if she does it, then let me know how it goes, because I think this is going to be terrific to see. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how these people that are just going through the same experience at the same time, whether there's that desire to want to stay connected for the rest of their lives. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do know that they need their own place. They need some sort of shared goal, and they need something that they're actually going to do within that group. I wish I could be more helpful with these questions, actually.
Well, I think you've been very helpful. We've got some positive feedback. Awesome answer. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today in our fourth Ning Talk with Richard Millington. I will post this to our Vimeo page as soon as possible and let you know when the next one is scheduled. So thank you all again for being here, and thank you to Richard Millington for teaching us.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for
science
listening,
behind online community. Have a great day, all.